Welcome to Soul Rising. We're your hosts, Amy and Erin. We're two everyday mediums who are passionate about taking the woo-woo out of spirituality and bringing it down to earth. So put the kettle on, grab a chair, and join us.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to
Hi, welcome.
Rising.
Welcome back,
We're your hosts, Amy and
Erin.
Erin. And this is episode 20, which is super exciting. Today, we're going to talk a little bit about spiritualism, the history of, and just some kind of some things that we've come across, in our reading and our learning. And we're going to do a little bit of an energy forecast for the week, as well as Erin is going to start by sharing a really recent ghost story. So let's start with that, Erin. Tell us about it. When, where?
I got really excited. Because at first when it happened, I think it happened, I don't know, like maybe 4 a.m. I don't know the exact time, but it was like,
okay.
It wasn't at night. It was like, I had like woken up, and I was awake for a little bit because I woke up. So I was kind of tossing and turning, like trying to go back to sleep. And then all of a sudden, the light in the kitchen turns on. Like totally on its own. And then it woke Alex up too. Like I was about to turn over and the light like rotate sides and the light turned on and Alex woke up and we're both like, what? And I think Alex even went to go investigate. None of the other lights were turned on. And then, because just as quickly as it turned on, it turned off. So it turned on enough to wake us up or to wake him up.
Get your attention. Yeah.
Which was weird. And you could hear the click. Like that was the weirdest part of it was you could hear the click. Because if somebody was, because we have like the, those lights, not the turning,
I know what you mean. Not the one, the dimmer.
We have a dimmer, but it's just like you touch it and the light turns on. You click the button.
Yeah, I get it.
Try to explain switches. It's not a switch. It's not a light switch. It's a dimmer that you click. Thank you. And
I don't know if you can see on the wall over there.
Yeah.
There's one as well. And it's the same thing. It's a dimmer, but you have to push
it.
And then on the bottom one, you have to push it down.
Yeah.
Okay. We probably have the same one.
We probably have the same one. I don't know if yours is too. Ours is. So maybe we were trying to Alex was looking into it because he's quite the debunker when it comes to this stuff. And because our lights are also hooked up to our Google. We have like a Google system. Yes. And we can say, hey, Google, turn the lights on and all the lights will come on. Or we can say, hey, Google, turn the kitchen light on and it'll come on.
Yeah.
And it just came on and Alex, and none of the other lights turned on. So that was the weird part. Because usually if if we say to turn on the lights, all of them turn on. But it was just the kitchen one and you could hear the click.
Had to turn the light on because you were sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and Alex looked it up. He goes, so I looked it up and the only explanation is a ghost. He goes, apparently that shouldn't happen. Maybe somebody out there is listening and has had this happen with their lights connecting to Google, but it was anyways, it was very weird and I got excited. And as soon as it happened, I thought, oh, I can't wait to share this tomorrow.
Yeah. And so it just happened overnight? Like today.
Yeah. So today, basically. Yeah.
Right. So
it's I just early this morning.
It's funny too, because that Spirit knows that today we're sharing, we're doing a podcast, right?
We're doing a podcast. Today is my day, my day of readings, where I'm not at placement. So I don't know, maybe they're just like, hey, we're here already. So just so you know.
Absolutely. No doubt. Yeah. And also to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's fresh in your mind and all that. That's really cool.
I loved it. I don't know who it was.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was a collection. For some reason, I'm hearing collection of energies.
Okay. Maybe for your people today, if you're doing
maybe for my people today. Yeah. Yeah.
Really
we're gonna turn on some lights. We're gonna make some light bulbs go off, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think that's something that they commonly do because like I was sharing in the last episode how I recently had somebody reach out and say, can you like take a look at this recorded doorbell cam video of mine? My like lights keep coming on and on, like in the house, not outside, but you could get a view of, I guess it wasn't a doorbell cam, it was just been a cam like near the house.
Yeah.
You could see the front of the house and you could see the bathroom, the upstairs bathroom light, like above kind of the doorway. And it was going on and off. So
that is so cool.
yeah, and I connected, and it was spirit connected to them. So I think it may be a common thing with lights. People talk about that all the time, about lights.
Yeah. I've never really had, I've had other wild things happen, but I've never had actually like lights turning off like that.
I have either. I was just thinking about that. I'm like, I don't think I've ever had my lights go on and off like that, unexplainable. Watch now, it's happening.
Yeah.
It's okay. Right? Come, I'm okay. I'm friendly.
I love, actually, there was I think I could share this. There was one of the mediums that I know, she was sharing the story about how she was giving a reading to this family who had traveled from, I don't know, somewhere outside of Ontario to come and see her for a reading. So it was like a big deal, Wow. And as she was talking and bringing in their loved one, this light in the room that she was giving the in-person reading to dimmed down and then dimmed all the way up, like this lamp. So but on a lamp, right, where there's like not really a dimmer for that, right? It's either on and off, but it like slowly built up, and then just as quickly as it lit up, it went out. And I guess the family said that happens quite a lot. So that was really, really cool validation for them. Speaking of lights.
That's really cool. Yeah, I love that.
Right? I've never had anything like that happen to readings. I've seen like maybe shadows out of the corner of my eye before, but
I've had, actually, now that we're talking, I've had a few times. So like my office is in our basement. So I've got a corner of it. The rest is like family room. So there's a TV and, toys and stuff like that. And there's been, I think at least twice it's happened. It hasn't happened in a few months, but where I was sitting here doing a reading with like a client I was talking to, and the TV would just turn on and it started playing like music. And I was like,
whoa, that's cool.
Right. And then I like go over and turn it off. But that's happened twice. And actually, no, it happened 3 times, because in one reading it happened twice. So I was like, oh, I'm so sorry. Hold on. I went and turned it off. I sat back down 5 minutes later. It did it again. I'm like, I don't know what's happening, because we lost the remote for the TV. So I'm like, it's not like somebody's sitting on the remote or anything, right? Like it's like literally somebody has to go over and press the actual button on the TV.
That's like with our lights.
Yeah.
Like if you want, you either have to say, hey, Google, turn the kitchen light on, or you press that button. We were sleeping. And when I heard that click on that, I heard the click. Like I was awake when it happened, right? Alex woke up. I was awake for it. It wasn't like, oh, maybe, we forgot to turn the lights off or something. I was coming out of sleep, but I heard the click. It was wild.
Wild. I love it. I love it.
That's my little ghost story for everybody.
I love it. Thanks for sharing. So let's talk about spiritualism.
Yes. I'm fascinated just with like the history of spiritualism. I think I'm fascinated with history in general. I think we share that in common.
Absolutely. Yeah. I really love learning about history.
Yeah. And I think it's just important. It's so important, right? To like think about, where we were, where we are now, and what we've learned along the way, or just to look back at how other people lived. I think it's like really fascinating. But spiritualism, they say, and so some of my sources, just so folks know, are from this Canadian Wikipedia. You can go and check it out and just type in Google spiritualism and it should just pop up. But they say that spiritualism as a religion developed in the 19th century, like with a larger spiritual and mystic like resurgence that came on. And it was like based on like early influences of mysticism from like Emanuel Swedenborg, I probably mispronounced their name, and North American Native beliefs. They also say that through the work of the 18th century Austrian physician F.A. Mesmer, who was a trance and clairvoyance, had become familiar with that area. So he was a mystic and I think a teacher. I might be wrong. And there's all of these like other people who, you know, found spiritualism and were fascinated by it. They also say too that, you know, during World War I, they say that there was like a really big spike in the amount of people who were investing, who were really interested in it, right? And that makes complete sense to me. They also talked about, you know, how even during, oh man, where is it? What plague was it? The influenza pandemic, not plague.
Still in that early time.
Still in that time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And again, there was a spike, an increase in interest in spiritualism. And I thought it was really interesting because you hear so much about Americans and where that, you know, how spiritualism became in the United States. And it really did originate with these group of the sisters. I don't know if you've heard of them, called the Fox sisters.
Yeah. You might have mentioned it before to me.
Yeah, so they're really interesting, right? Because they claimed, I think the story goes, and I could be totally wrong. This is all just like from my memory of like reading on it in the past. But you can also go to like the Smithsonian magazine. They have a whole article on the Fox sisters as well, if you Google that. But they say that like in, you know, I think it was 1848. Where, you know, was Margaret, so Maggie Fox and her younger sister Kate, share the story with like their neighbor, about how they were hearing raps or like taps in the walls and they were communicating with spirits. And that just like spread out, you know, people heard about this and they wanted to come see this. And for some reason, Amy, in my mind, and I'm trying so hard to find this, but I swear to God, I heard it on a podcast one time that Dan Aykroyd's great-grandfather?
Did I tell you this too? Because I know of this and I recently told somebody this.
Yeah, right? Because, but I heard it on another podcast like years ago, I think it was is it The Last House on the Left? There's another podcast and they talk about like paranormal. I think they had Dan, and like just interesting things. They had Dan Aykroyd on, I believe, and he was talking about how his great-grandfather or grandfather would have seances and actually knew the Fox sisters.
Yeah, because what I read about that was that, and I think, is Dan Aykroyd not from this area of the woods, like this neck of the woods where I'm from?
He is. He's from Kingston.
Where I live. Yeah, because there's
he has a home there.
Yeah, there's an area just outside of Kingston where he's known to frequent. And it's funny you mentioned that because I was recently reading about, I think I actually read an article about it in the local paper. About
probably because he's not afraid to.
Yeah, and how like
afraid to talk about it.
Ghostbusters came about, like the idea of it, kind of based on all of this stuff, like that he had grown up with and learned from, you know, his grandfather.
Yeah. It's so really, really cool. Oh yeah, I remember I was watching. It was super recent because the newest Ghostbusters movie came out, right? Like I thought it was. I liked it. It felt like more of like a tribute to the old Ghostbusters.
I haven't seen the newest one yet.
It's cute, and I think your kids would like it.
With the women, I can't remember their names.
No, there's that one which I love.
Yeah,
but there's another one that was made by Harold Ramis's, or directed by his son.
Okay,
and because Harold Ramis directed and was in the first one, or helped to write the first one as well. Is it Harold Ramis? Am I making that up? Somebody out there is a diehard Ghostbusters fan, and
they're like, "You're wrong, Erin. You're wrong."
I'm sorry. But yeah, and because I was watching this, I was like late night with Jimmy Fallon, and love Dan Aykroyd was going off and like telling all of these stories and like mediumship and talking about spiritualism and his great grandfather. It's a great. I loved it. And then all of a sudden Bill Murray is like, you can't say that here. People are going to look for a 1-800 number to call. And I'm like, I can just imagine though the conversations that they've already had about it. But anyways, I thought that was a really interesting little tidbit because Dan Aykroyd's really into this stuff. I think he's maybe a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, but it's really interesting to hear about.
Friends in his family as well, you know, like we've talked about that before. Like I don't know if it's an actual thing, but like people say it is, that if you have somebody in your family that, you know, is energy, not, I don't want to say like just a medium, but certainly I feel like mediums may run in the family a little bit. Did we ever talk about, is there anybody in your family that you can think of or you know for sure?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. So, well, I mean, my mom's very sensitive to spirit.
She definitely
she experienced,
could develop, I think, for sure.
Oh yeah, I think so too. And then I know that my great grandmother read tea leaves.
And that was
but that wasn't something that was widely talked about because.
And did we talk about how neat that is? Because my great grandmother was a medium and read tea leaves, and so she, like, I believe she called herself a medium, but like probably not to the wide public. So the story that I've been told, that my grandmother only just recently told me in the last couple of years, like, you know, like a year or two into me doing this work, and I'm like, well, how haven't you told me this before? Was that she grew up, for the first few years she lived with her grandparents, and so I guess that would make her my great grandmother, the one that medium, because it was my great grandmother's mother. Anyhow, she
that's cool.
She grew up with her, and she'd like sit on the stairs when she was supposed to be in bed and listen, because people would come in the side door and sit in the kitchen at night, you know, candlelight, to read tea leaves. And I guess mediumship at that point might be called more like
seances.
Right. And so that was a part of something she remembers and was always open to. And
that would have been during the wave of spiritualism, right?
Yeah, I guess this would have been, so my grandmother was born in 1927. So, you know, if she lived with them for the first, till she was 5, we're talking about the late 20s into the early 30s.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And as you're talking, it's reminding me of this book that I'm not quite done it yet, but it's called, what is it called? There's a River. I want to say it's called There Is a River, but the most important thing is it's by somebody called, it's about the life of Edgar Cayce. Have you ever heard of Edgar Cayce?
Oh.
Amazingly, he is called like the father of holistic kind of stuff. Like,
wow.
So I've got him up here on Wikipedia. So he was dubbed the Sleeping Prophet. So this was back, his life was from 1877 to 1945. He was an American clairvoyant who claimed to channel from his higher self while asleep in a trance-like state. So he was like really big in the church. He had, you know, by the time he was 10, he had read the Bible like a dozen times. He started to do this thing. He wasn't like very good at school, apparently.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of pressure from like his family to do better. And so he ended up having this like visitation by an angel like appearance, who advised him to put his school books under his pillow and sleep on them. And then he'd wake up and he'd know everything in the whole book.
I tried that. Maybe it worked for him. It did not work for me.
Yeah, but so he would like, I think then his teacher had kind of quizzed him one day, and every question he answered, it was right. Everything was right. And they were like, what? Because the day, like, you know, before that, he appeared to like not be able to remember anything. So it was like, what? So yeah, he did that. And then I want to say, I didn't get as far in the book yet to see if he actually did become somebody in the church or not, but I know he was very, very religious, and he actually struggled with this, like, is this okay? What is this all about?
Yeah.
Why am I experiencing this?
I can see that for sure.
Yeah, he did become quite well known, and he worked with his father for a little bit. He would do readings, people would travel to him. He lived in like I want to say he was born in Kentucky, but he ended up in Virginia Beach, and there is actually a place there called the Association for Research and Enlightenment, which still exists, and that was his baby that he created. And so he would, like, people would travel to him, and he would go, okay, like, and he kind of like take his cufflinks off and take his shoes off and lay down on a bed, and then appear to fall asleep. And as he was asleep, he would start talking about like the person that was in the room. So he would know nothing about them, but everything was medical based. Like,
yeah, so I definitely feel like I've heard of him.
Yeah. I think probably a lot of people have heard of him. But yeah, the Sleeping Prophet. So if you want to give a Google, the Sleeping Prophet, or Edgar Cayce, his last name is spelled Cayce. But yeah, he did a lot of work and is known to be like kind of, the father of holistic kind of medicine.
Wow.
Because he, a lot of his work was health related stuff.
Yeah.
I was reading a story where somebody, I can't remember who it was, like a well-known person in business at the time, like would have been like quite rich compared to him, because a lot of his stories about like being very poor and not having a lot.
Yeah.
His daughter, not Edgar Cayce, this other person's daughter, was like having all these infections, was having trouble. And Edgar Cayce was like, it's one of her teeth, like there's an infection or something, and they were like, we take her to the doctor, they don't see any infection, there's no signs of infection. He said, you need to pull the tooth. And so the dentist was like, I don't want to pull like a healthy tooth, there's no infection. But the father was adamant that he should pull the tooth, and pulled the tooth, and it was like all this infection, they treated it, and all of her ailments went away.
Oh my God.
He was having trouble, like not being able to walk anymore. Like she was like,
it was bad.
And it was, so I found that really interesting too. But the reason I bring that up is because I don't necessarily feel like he was part of spiritualism, like maybe a little bit, but not like classified as so. But it was around that same time, right? The time period is the same.
Yeah.
Things are emerging.
It's really significant too. I just thought it was so interesting, especially just seeing the spikes, during the pandemic and World War I, and it makes so much sense. And I don't know if you also you've probably noticed it during when we were like in the heat of COVID. It was really busy. Yeah. And that it makes sense. It's interesting. It makes a lot of sense to me. Yeah.
We're looking for answers.
People are looking for answers, right? Yeah. And we hope we can provide you at least a little glimpse of those answers that you're looking for.
Like, especially during the pandemic, where you need to kind of isolate, or you have more time with your own thoughts. That might be part of it as well.
Reflecting a lot, right?
You're listening rather than kind of running on autopilot or being busy. So there's probably something to that as well, like those times in history. It'd be interesting if you like looked back even further in history, if there's
just to see.
Like if those kind of things spiked during past, major transitional, I want to say, times in history.
It'd be really, really interesting. I'd love to I have so many things on my to-do list that I want to read and that I want to research.
I'm passionate that I have so many things I want to do and learn and be, and it's like, where's the time? But and I used to think that was kind of like a weakness.
I
don't think it is anymore. I think that those are all breadcrumbs.
I think so too.
Find the time at some point. Like it's almost like this is something for you, and it will come to you like when it's ready. It's just kind of giving you a heads up. It will.
I think so. I think so. I also thought it was interesting about spiritualism, talking about Dan Aykroyd as like one of the celebrities. There is, I think it's called the Society of Psychical Research, and I believe it's based in the UK.
Yeah.
or it's stemmed from the UK. But there were a lot of people who were really into spiritualism, and actually Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, writer of Sherlock Holmes, huge on spiritualism, and like actually loved, and I think he worked specifically with a mediums, one medium specifically, but really dove right down the rabbit hole with all of these, with the movement. And then all the other one was our very own Prime Minister Mackenzie King, who actually is said to haunt, I think, somewhere around Parliament in Ottawa.
Very cool.
People have seen sightings of him. Yeah.
I was just reading something recently about like astrology, because that's like one of my passions that I'm learning a lot in, and about how like certain people, like influential people at time, would kind of get their chart read by an astrologer before doing major things. I hope this isn't wrong, but I feel like for some reason Princess Diana was one of those people, as well. Like somebody that's really well known for that was Nancy Reagan, who was the wife of Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Apparently,
yeah, I think
get stuff read before making major decisions. Really into that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's also oh gosh, what is that president's name? He's very famous. Oh shit. Oh no.
American president.
American President Lincoln.
Okay.
And when they lost their son, I think what was his wife's name again? Because she was huge, a huge influence. Anyways, but she wanted to do a seance to connect with their son. And actually they got some like pretty big evidence. So there's been seances in the White House.
Amazing. That doesn't surprise me.
No, not at all, right? And so I think that's why they say
imagine the energy in the White House.
I was just gonna say, like, that's why they say the White House is haunted too, because
I've like not been inside. I don't know, like, can people go inside for a tour?
Yeah, I think you can.
Okay, because we went in the summer of 2017, so this was like about a year and a bit before I realized I was a medium. We visited. We didn't go inside,
but you visited.
But we visited the White House, and we walked around it, and we went to. We also were in Virginia and went to the what's it called? Oh my God, it's gonna drive me crazy. I should know this. In Arlington, there's a massive cemetery.
Oh, okay.
Military.
Yeah.
It's like we budgeted like 3 hours. We were there for 6. I'm like, we walked through. It's so huge. It's so huge. Yeah, it's crazy. But yeah, I felt a lot of energy there. So now I'm thinking, if I went back there now, with what I know now and the work that I've done now, and opened myself even up more fully, I imagine I could go there and pick up a lot of stuff. But it's funny because I almost had this sense of anxiety when we were there.
Yeah, I can see that. Well, that's like when
that's for me. Yeah,
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's like I think I shared the story on the podcast before, but when I visited the 9/11 War Memorial Museum, I was physically dizzy and I needed to.
I think I would be too. I've never been to.
There's a lot.
It's on my bucket list.
Yeah.
I really want to go. We were supposed to go a couple of years ago, right before COVID, but I would love to visit that too. I think it would probably be a lot. Did you do anything beforehand to kind of like protect, like not to protect as if anything's going to get you, but I mean just kind of like,
I think I just
bubble your energy a little.
You know what? Maybe I didn't, and maybe that's why.
Yeah.
I definitely asked my guides just to stick by me.
Yeah.
But it's quite, I mean, for obvious reasons, it's quite heavy, and a lot to take in. But it was, it was like they have actual, I think one of the fire trucks, or they also have like wreckage from. Yeah,
I was recently like watching, I think it was on YouTube, Long Island Medium. She did a special in September because it had been the 20th anniversary, and she did readings. Like there was a bunch of episodes of, or maybe it might have been a special, but I watched it on YouTube. So they were broken down by reading, of people that had like lost people in 9/11. So, yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that would be,
A lot.
awful. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
as we're talking about spiritualism, I said to Erin, hey, I have a book on spiritualism. So I haven't like read it. Had it for a few years. I had it at the
I'm excited.
recommendation of another medium when I first started this work. So I've had it for like, 4 years. It's called The Spirit's Book, and it's by somebody called Allan Kardec. So we might talk a little bit about him today because he was a big name in spiritualism. And this is from the United States Spiritist Foundation. That is who published it. And I just wanted to quickly say, so I'm going to be reading directly from this book. So it says, spiritualism is the opposite of materialism. Anyone who believes that something more than matter exists inside of us is a spiritualist. But this does not necessarily mean that they believe in the existence of spirits or the communication with the physical world. It is with this distinction in mind that we avoid the use of spiritual or spiritualism and instead use spiritist or spiritism. I can't say that. Spiritism. Spiritism.
Little tongue twister.
Yeah, so they don't use spiritual and spiritualism. They would use spiritist for somebody who believes that there's something more than matter, and spiritism to describe somebody that would believe in the existence of spirits and the ability to communicate with them. So I found that interesting. So it says these words indicate their origin and root meaning and have the advantage of being perfectly clear and understandable. Therefore, we reserve the word spiritualism for its commonly accepted meaning and the central principle of spiritism as a relationship of the physical world with spirits or beings that inhabit the invisible world. So that was interesting. So, they call it spiritism and not spiritualism.
Because as you were talking, it's really cool. As you were talking about it, I just remember like past research past stuff that I've looked into, and there's spirit, like it's still alive and well, spiritists or spiritism. There's churches in Canada. There's one in Toronto. There's another one in Vancouver. I'm sure there's some in the United States. So I've never heard of it.
It's a big thing in the UK as well.
In the UK, yeah.
Big thing in the UK.
It's so interesting.
I asked our friend Emily about that too, because I feel like Emily and I have talked about spiritism before, that she might have gone to a spiritist church. One of my clients, somebody that I have read for before and communicate with, has been to many spiritist church. So I'll have to think on that and think of who that was.
Now I want to go. I'm just so curious to see what.
Well, like I said, I feel like I Googled where the closest one to me is, and I feel like there is one in Ottawa. I mean, there's one even closer to you in Toronto. So maybe like when we finally meet in person,
we should
for sure.
Yeah, we'll make it part of like the tour, part of our pit stop.
Yeah, well, like we will record it and like make it an episode.
Lights, cool. Light bulbs turning on.
That'd be really cool. We definitely have to do that.
Oh yeah, we've got to do a whole bunch of. I'm so excited for when in person.
I know. I can't wait. So I guess that's what spiritualism or spiritism is. So I guess like any one of us that does this work would essentially be a spiritism.
A spiritist.
Yeah. Because we believe in the community, the ability to communicate. We believe that there are spirits, first of all. That's the first thing. And second, that we can communicate with them. So I think that's cool. So a lot of you listening likely are as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So a question that I get sometimes is like, what is the difference between, like, what is a soul and what is a spirit? And I usually give this specific definition, but as I'm reading and learning more, I'm starting to almost feel like my definitions are changing a bit. So for you, like, what do you, not to put you on the spot, but like, if somebody asked you that, what would you say?
The soul and spirit.
Yeah. Like, what's the difference?
I mean, well, I immediately just want to go to that. I feel like they're so intertwined. Um, when I talk about spirit or spirit is saying this, I've always told folks, just to let them know when I say spirit, I'm talking about the collective energy as a whole. So our guides, our ancestors, all coming in collectively with messages for us. Versus I feel like the soul would maybe be our energy.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if that's similar for you though. We have a little guest.
There's a guest. Can I talk to you about that after? Thank you.
Is that 100? I want 150.
Okay. Talk about
Whoa.
Not thank you. Not 150. 450.
That's a lot.
I got a little guy at home, so guest.
It's okay.
We'll have to put like guest the speaker. Yeah, I say the same thing. So sometimes when I'm like doing a reading, or especially with an intuitive guidance, maybe one, where I am not necessarily picking up on the energy of somebody around, but I'm reading their energy. I will sometimes refer to, well, spirit says this, and then I remember somebody goes, well, who is spirit? Like, what do you mean? And I said, well, in this case, I'm really referring to you. Your spirit.
Your spirit, yeah.
Yeah, or sometimes I'll say your higher self as a way for it to be maybe more understood in that moment.
Yeah.
But because we all have spirits, we are spirit. This is how
and that's why I feel like it's just so intertwined. I just feel like, I mean, we do this as humans. It's our nature to put labels on things in order for us to understand.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So how about, I'm going to read something quickly.
Yeah.
And then this is going to be it for this week, but we are going to continue this conversation in episode 21 next week. We're also going to, in the next episode, talk a bit more about, what the difference between being a psychic and a medium is. Is there a difference? Are they the same thing? I know some people use them very interchangeably. We'll talk about that as well moving forward. I guess I'll end with, this. So from this book, again, it's called The Spirits Book by Allan Kardec. We forgot to talk about Allan Kardec. We'll talk a little bit more about him too. So it says, some define the soul as the principle of organic life with no existence of its own and ending with the life of the body. Okay, so something that's like in the body that doesn't live on. According to this belief, otherwise known as materialism. So remember that spiritualism is the opposite of materialism. The soul is an effect and not a cause in that belief. And I certainly know people who would believe that.
Yeah.
Who've said that they do. So then we've got others believe that the soul is the principle of intelligence, the universal agent of which each being absorbs a portion. So it's kind of like that image sometimes we get of like, we're just all drops of the ocean.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ocean is the soul and we're just all little drops.
We're all little drops.
Yeah. So like the collective consciousness, maybe in that case, you could call the soul.
Yeah.
There's like this divine intelligence.
Wow. That's pretty huge. I've never even heard of that.
I have heard of that. I've read some books. I read a book actually by Gary Zukov, who I absolutely love. One of my favorite books is called The Seed of the Soul, if you're ever looking for an amazing book to read. But there is a part in one of his books where he kind of starts the book with that, about all being drops in the ocean, and that's the divine intelligence, and we are all just little sparks of it. So according to this theory, there is only one soul for the entire universe that distributes sparks of itself to all intelligent beings. When these beings die, each spark returns to the common source and rejoins the general whole, just as streams and rivers flow back to the ocean from where they were originally produced. Now, I personally, that really resonates with me.
Yeah, but it's interesting because for me, see, that would be spirit.
Yeah, isn't it interesting?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm
Yeah, and
curious what
me
spirit is.
too,
Yeah.
actually. So that is like really how I would think of spirit as well, that we are like individual spirits right now living separate kind of existences, but we are all
All
connected,
yeah.
and we go back to that place where we're all connected. So yeah, that would be
Yeah.
more of my definition of spirit as well. So it's super interesting. And then it says, yet there are people who view the soul as a moral being, completely distinct, and free from matter. This being preserves its
Yeah.
individuality after death. Okay, so that kind of works with us, I think, and how we do our work.
Yeah,
This
absolutely.
interpretation of the word soul is unquestionably the most widely received, because the idea of a being surviving the body is an instinctive belief, independent of all teachings, evidence of which may be found across all nations, ethnic groups, and religions, regardless of their degree of civilization. This doctrine, which dictates that the soul is a cause and not an effect, is supported by spiritualists. So I think that's really cool. So there's different definitions. It seems like the most widely understood is the
That's
Latin.
really cool.
Which is kind of what we, I think as well, like the soul is something. So, it's interesting because my view on these things are really evolving as I'm doing more reading. And that I've talked about before, I've been doing a lot of reading about the Course in Miracles, which is a religious text that really says that we are all one, like we're all the same thing.
Yeah.
So, and it talks about that in books related to A Course in Miracles, specifically one called The Disappearance of the Universe, and the other is called Jesus and Buddha Were Friends.
Yeah.
Which I just finished last night.
I want to finish that.
About reincarnation. Yeah. So that does support the idea of reincarnation, and that it does happen, although it's just another layer of the dream, right? So if you remember, A Course in Miracles kind of states that all of this, the universe, is all a dream, right?
Yeah.
And that past lives do occur, and past life readings are real because we're just remembering the past dream.
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool. But
there's so much you're talking that's like spinning my mind. I mean, I feel like though reincarnation, the dream thing also is very prominent in indigenous cultures.
Yes.
Like that belief. Yeah. So now I'm like thinking of colonization and like settler, right? Like where does that all of these ideas come from? Someplace, right? Like I feel like
and I think that might have
different things are
a little bit. Yeah, it's like, because it said it's the most widely received. That's found across all nations, ethnic groups, and religion, regardless of their degree of civilization. So it seems like that is kind of this universal belief in some, it's a core belief of our as humans.
Yeah. I mean, I think there's always these like things that with different religions that can like they're so connected, right?
That's the thing.
We're all one.
Reincarnate. Is how they all. There's so much overlap.
There's so much overlap.
I think it's really cool. So let's end here for episode 20.
Yeah. Let's do it.
Let's do it. And stay tuned for episode 21, which we will continue the chat. Have a good week, guys. Bye.
Bye.
If you like what you're hearing, don't forget to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast and tune in each week as we dish on all things spiritual.